Hello to everybody online. We're just going to give it 1 or 2 minutes. There's a few people trickling into here. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody in the room and everybody online. This is the Summer Capital Region Transportation Council Freight Advisory Committee. Really appreciate all our guests who've come today. First, we'll start out with introductions. And for the folks online, if you wouldn't mind putting your name and your organization in the chat, just to help me out for the folks who I might not be 100% sure who you are. But we'll start in the room. I think I know everybody here. I'm Chris Bauer, Director of Transportation Planning here at the Transportation Council, and we'll go this way.
I'm Valerie Dean. I'm from Region 1 of the Transportation Department.
Wes Gazio, Supervisor, Town OOIDA.
Tom Phelan, VHX Engineer.
Good morning, Kate Manor, CDRC.
Rich Hendrick, Executive Board of Law.
Mary Time, Jason Tucker.
Jim Bushman, Nagin Truck.
John Scaville, Town of Clifton Park.
Greg Pedrosian, G. Vernova, Gas Power.
Brent Shawcross, G. Vernova, Onshore Wind.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. And so now I'm going to go through the folks who are online. We've got 15 people online. We have Jeff Witovich from RPI, Dr. Lawson from University at Albany, Rick Crawford from Norfolk Southern, Ryan Riper from Wilton, Eric Vandenberg from Metroplex, John Davidson from DA Collins. We have Gautam Mani from FHWA, Mike Izdebski from Plug Power, Nate Owens from the town of Bethlehem, Rima Lutan from EPA, Tony Vassal from Tony, I forgot the name of your consultant organization.
H.A. Vassal Associates.
Thank you. Sorry, Tony.
Nope.
We have Christian Martin from GE. And we have two other folks on here. Let's see. We have Erica Beckford, and we have someone signed in as TIMBE. Maybe if you could unmute and tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Erica Beckford. My company is MC Samuels Logistics. We're a freight logistics transportation brokerage. Thank you for having me.
Oh, hi, Erica. Okay, your name must have showed up twice here on the list. And
Oh, good morning, Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council.
okay, anybody else I missed? Everybody have a chance to introduce themselves? All right. So, just a quick look at today's agenda. The highlight of the meeting is we're going to be talking about sort of the hot freight topic here at the Transportation Council right now, which is over dimension routing and all the great things that are happening at GE. And then we'll have some updates on the state freight transportation plan, our clean communities, our MTP, and we'll have member updates, hopefully the time after that. So, without further ado, I'm going to stop the presentation here. Bring up yours. Can the folks online see the go back? I don't think I'm at the
Yeah,
first.
but can you make it full screen?
Can I make it full
I-
screen? I don't know. This might be the best that I can do.
Okay, that's fine.
Is it
takes up
legible?
most- Yeah,
Takes up most of the screen? Okay, great. So Brent Shawcross from GE Vernova's here. You know, as sort of trying to set the stage for how we might approach looking at over-dimension routing through the region, we really wanted to start to get a sense of, well, what are the things that we're actually moving through the region and what are the plans for those? And so we really appreciate GE Vernova coming in today and telling us a little bit more about what's going on over there. So I will just pass the mouse over here and you can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. So again, Brent Shawcross from the onshore wind part of GE Vernova, and then Greg's here from Gas Power, and I'll just head time. There's poor kind of coordination on my part with Greg. So this is a wind focused presentation, which is, you know, the wind is kind of the new item that we're building. It's going to be. Greg, please jump in if there's clarifying details on gas power or
Sure.
however you want to handle that. So you go through just kind of give a brief overview of GE Vernova's kind of recent investments in wind manufacturing in Schenectady, and kind of what we're moving. Got some high level specs on that, and then I can kind of talk generally to our plans for the future. So GE Vernova manufacturing in Schenectady, just as background for those who aren't aware, earlier this year, GE kind of completed the division of companies. So GE Vernova is the new standalone GE company that focuses on energy production, building things that energy companies. So in Schenectady, generators, steam turbines, and wind turbines, what we build here. So the Schenectady campus, everyone's probably familiar with it generally. You can see very large number of buildings, large office space, large manufacturing space, and most importantly, you know, $80 million or more of recent investments, in large part to bring wind to Schenectady, but also to expand the gas power production as well. So at least 50 million, specifically for wind. This is around bringing our 6 megawatt machine. So GE Vernova has a number of we call workhorse products. So we have a 2 to 3 megawatt machine, a 3 to 4 megawatt machine, and now this is the 6 megawatt machine. Originally designed overseas for other markets, but now we're bringing it to the United States. We had one kind of rollout project a couple of years ago in Western New York, and now it is, and those units were actually built overseas. Now it's in serial production in Schenectady, and we are, you know, delivering over 100 this year to projects out in the Western United States. And as part of kind of the build out of Schenectady, like I said, over 200 new jobs, build out of the kind of legacy building 273, which is the big manufacturing center there, new moving line, production line, new cranes, new, you know, a lot of new capital equipment that we brought there. And so just a little bit about the turbines. You see it's extremely large, thus all the transportation challenges. It's a 158 meter rotor for the United States. It's a 101 to 117 meter tower. And then what we're actually building in Schenectady is the machine head, so the box that sits on top, and that's where the generator and the transformer and some other internals are located. So that's vast majority of your weight for the entire turbine, and obviously the part that's making the energy that large part, most important part. We want to flip to the video.
Sure.
So we have a brief video, which aside from just seeing a turbine erected, which is kind of interesting in of itself, has some really good opportunity to see the parts of the turbine being built.
Oh.
That's not it.
That's weird. Here, let me spread this for a second. It's Tony. Okay. So let's try this again here. That's weird.
Escape to get out of it. Or may just try click.
All right, we're gonna stop share for a second here. Sorry about that, folks. There's, I don't know why. This does not want to play. Right? Just reshare this. Hold on a second. Reshare my screen. Hopefully the folks online will be able to see and hear this.
We can.
So this isn't the cell. This is one of the components that we're building in Schenectady. The hub and the drivetrain are just being built in Schenectady. Here you see the drivetrain assembled, but we actually built two different parts. So hopefully that gives a sense of the scale. I thought it was just a little bit easier than the pictures to see the components that we're building here. So even though that box is kind of small at the top of the screen, it's the top of the tower. It's pretty massive.
So I know the folks online, there was no audio, but just so you know, there was just music during the video, so you didn't miss anything. It was just music behind the video.
Don't have
Oh, you're like your mouse is like down here. Sorry.
I see.
There you go. Oh, there you go.
Okay, perfect. So then what we're building here today, like I said over the video, it's the part at the top of the arrow. So the nacelle, the hub, and then the drivetrain internal to the nacelle.
Just to mention, just where we draw the line in gas power, for our components, we call it what we would call like a super load for heavy haul, right? Of excess of 143,000 pounds. These are typically, either a component going into a new stator, right? And it's typically, those would be like our field forgings. It looks like, a big long bar metal, basically, and that's the guts of the generator that spin and drive the actual field inside. And those actually, we do a lot of services there. So there's a rewind program for that generator where they're being actually swapped out the building back and forth. And that's what drives the necessity for over the road transport. Typically when those are fully wound, they do go back to sites, exit via rail. They're much heavier and they're partially disassembled at the site. The other thing that we do have is heavy haul coming in on road are the actual frames for the stators. Before, they get the guts put in them, so to speak. However, they do, because so much weight is added to the internal components, that they can't go back out by road, and they typically go out by rail. And we currently aren't having those same challenges, just because dimensionally we actually have adjusted a lot of the dimensions to work within the requirements and constraints that we have. Like we have a generator that for the last iteration of that is being sold this year, and then coming up in 2027, 2028, we actually have a redesign that generator based on the actual frame, so that we some of the constraints that we've had as challenges. But the product of scale where you're buying multiples of the units with onshore, they don't have that luxury of being able to design, I don't want to say one-off, but do a smaller limited run of those. But we are looking to try to partner with them if possible, or help with some of the challenges.
Great, excellent, thank you. So one question that I had is, I know we had sort of had a similar set of conversations about moving things from G to the port maybe about 8 years ago. And at the time, there was a desire to use the rail and the roads and water. Is using the canal still part of your plan or not really?
That's a tricky question. It does come back up, but currently, right now, I would say no, unless there's other information that I have, as far as from a gas power standpoint. Like it's not going to make or break our business having that there.
Mm-hmm.
I think during that conversation, there was a question of adding maritime infrastructure. Now, obviously, there are large slip some infrastructure at the site would facilitate that. There had been, well, at one point there had been built the actual structure, and so then at one point, or had looked at routine, but others have looked at actually building infrastructure adjacent to the sites of loadout. That's part of the challenge. Well, really consideration. It's just the schedule that the canal accessible, portable year round. If that's fair to John.
Yeah, I mean that's all correct, because what are you going to say to a customer with a project? So I'm sorry, we got to wait a couple months for the water level, right? We do have those challenges on the Mississippi as well for deliveries, but not at the scale that we would have impact the canal.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's been some studies with 890. What do you do? Do you go under it? You can't really go under, like, because of where there's literally a constraint on every single aspect of that.
I think it was too, at the point they were looking at it more as offshore wind. That then building maybe some of those components is going to be, that was a big part of that, because it would be consistent movement like these are. And that was more what it was, kind of
Right.
Right. So
then
And if you think of offshore wind, of those cells, they're even bigger than what you saw in the video.
I saw them in France. They're two, three-story house.
So that's good information for us to know because you know, we're always trying to understand what projects we need to be focusing on, particularly when we're looking out 5, 10, or 20 years, and we have a regional freight plan, and in there is a project for like cargo supportive improvements on the canal. And so if that's not something that we feel like is really that much important anymore, then maybe that segues nicely into the next conversation that we're going to have about what is the desired way to move these things. But before we move on to that, any other questions for the folks from GE?
Let me say, I've been in the transportation industry, career spanning well over 50 years. Got my class 1 license in 1967. I'm pretty well versed in transportation, and I'm all about jobs and transportation. As a supervisor, though, I have to put my supervisor's hat on in the town of Princetown, this is routed through. Nobody consulted me about any of the routes that were going to be followed. Over the past, maybe this is not the right forum to discuss this, but I have to bring it up. Over the past year and a half, we've had 15 water main breaks. Okay? You're routing these trucks over a county road. I know. I happen to live on it. And up 406. Most of the time, takes 15 minutes to make the turn on Pangburn Road because of the size of the trailer. You can tell me, you can spread the axles out all you want, but after talking with one of the owner-operators that are hauling these things, they're upwards of 251,000 pounds going over these roads. When we have a water main break, half of the road is blocked off. What are you going to do when you come down this road and the road is blocked off and you can't get by it? Which happens quite regularly because we have a water system that's failing continuously. Like I said, we've had 15 water main breaks in the last year and a half. Like I said, I'm all about jobs and transportation. I get that. I really do get that. But I can't do it at the town's expense. What this is costing the town is tremendous amount of money. Just paid over $20,000 for a leak detection company to come in to find out where all of our leaks are. And we have plenty of them. Small leaks, they develop into big leaks. One of the roads that you're traveling on is, we had a water main break right after that. That truck went up through there. And I'm not saying it's all on this, on the transportation part of it, but this certainly does not help our town at all. We were never consulted about the routing. I could have told you all of this in the beginning, what this was going to cause. You block the roads off when you come through. I'm getting constant complaints from people that they're forced to park in people's driveway because you block off the road coming down through. My point is, the town can't sustain this, and I'm not blaming it all on the heavy loads, but 251,000 pounds coming across these roads. And with a water system that we have that is failing as much as it is. I've talked with everybody about this, trying to get some help to redo these lines. I've gotten nothing. I think that the town should have been consulted at one point before you started routing it. I know you route them over Dunsville Road. Sometimes they go over that way. You're going up 406, which is in our town. That's a state road, but that's where we have our water main breaks and Pangburn Road, which I live on, and I see this all the time. And I watch the cars pulling in with all the complaints I get about this. If there was another way to route this, it would certainly help the town out. But we can't sustain these kind of things. And I'm not blaming it all on these heavy loads. You're going over a thruway bridge, I might add, that's 71 years old. We already had a bridge go down years ago on a thruway, and people lost their lives. Putting this kind of weight on there on a bridge that that is over 70 years old. 1954, I think the thruway opened up. Just my point, and I think that the town should have been consulted on this. That's all I have to say about it.
Well, Lou, thank you for your comments. And actually, that's kind of why we wanted to start this conversation because as we've learned, it's not just the town of Princetown. A lot of the municipalities along the way are dealing with challenges from moving these objects or just trucking in general. But and so maybe to move on and to sort of take Lou's point and to maybe talk, try to put some thought into what are the next steps here. I wanted to talk about sort of this just general overdimension routing issue and how it sort of was brought to us here and maybe what we can do at the MPO or not, and hopefully involve stakeholders like you to identify a route or a set of routes or projects that will help create a route to avoid hopefully the complicated moves that neither party really wants to do. You know what I mean? So anyhow, so I guess it's probably an understatement, but and I was just trying to sort of put a purpose to why we the MPO are doing this, and I wrote a very generic purpose of moving this valuable, oversized, overweight cargo to, from, and through the region has many challenges. And I was just talking to someone before the meeting and saying, this particular issue that we're talking about here is, I see a convergence of, the state has their energy goals and aggressive energy goals. We have a private manufacturer who's made a big investment, who has a legacy in our region. We have a port that has capabilities, the heavy lift capabilities that make them unique and special in the Northeast. But all that being said, right, the devil is in the details. And these, like some of the things that Lou mentioned, are the details that we really do need to get into to make this happen a little bit more seamlessly. And not to say that it's not going to be challenging. We know it's going to be challenging. But a little bit of background, like I said, 6 or 8 years ago, we had, kind of this discussion was going on. And then not that I'm sure lots was happening at GE, but from our part, we just didn't hear much about it for a while, for whatever reason. It seemed like either the things that were being asked for had happened, like the things being done at the port and the RoRo, dock and the climate control warehouse and all that. And then recently, back in June, at another meeting, high-ranking member of our policy board had met with some of the folks who are in the room today and, kind of said, hey, we got a problem, that we see coming in the next few years with what's happening at GE and, trying to move these to the port and, how can you help us? And so, as an MPO, on one hand, being a regional transportation agency, we're very well positioned to handle this from that aspect. On the other hand, we do long range transportation planning. So something that's going to happen next year or even in 3 years is generally a short time frame for us. So we're hoping to try to maybe start the conversation and then maybe it goes someplace else. Maybe there's some parts of it that we take on here that can have a little bit longer of a timeline. But at least, get all the folks in the room to talk about the issues at the same time. So our initial thought was, okay, we have 3 big studies going on. We have the Reimagine 787 study, the 890 Pell study, and the state freight plan. And so we made connections between the folks at Dagan and GE with those studies to say, hey, at least try to get your input into what's happening over here. And, to whatever extent they can include this in their projects, I think it would be very helpful because I think all those, especially Reimagine 787 and the 890 Pell, have a real opportunity here to address this. We also have taken on some data collection And we've started with the folks who came to us first, which is Dagan Trucking, and they've been extremely helpful in just helping us collect information about what roads do they use, where are their problems, what roads would they like to use, and that's an effort we're just starting. We're going to continue that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, today what we're doing is introducing the topic to the Freight Advisory Committee, and really, ultimately, we need to introduce this to our Planning Committee and Policy Board, because this is important enough. It needs to go to that level. Sure, please do.
Overall, and transportation, which is 100%, but also my background is economic development, good economic development background, and you're pointing out, you're talking about it years ago. Part of it is production, correct me if I'm wrong, production could occur somewhere else. Production could occur in another state. And so this is a real economic development opportunity for the state of New York on a couple of different levels, not only the production, but the transportation aspect, and then the multiplier effect from manufacturing, the most substantial part of the industry. And so that's the other aspect to consider as well. And along this, many other aspects of the economy, the easier we can make this for all, but the easier we can make this to happen in New York, more likely. The harder it is, the consideration of, is this the best place for it? So I think that's the other part that I want to have as part of the conversation too, is how we make this sustainable.
If you're right on the approach, I wrote down the policy versus administration that been set by executive state, state agencies, us to come around the table and say how to reach those goals. Part of it, each state development, putting a lot of money towards job creation, manufacturing, creating local infrastructure, that's New York. After upgrading infrastructure, manufacturing. It's not just limited to this example today. It's just how to grow in better marketplace and expand it. Manufacturing. It's only going to come with its upgrades to the infrastructure. So I think that would be one state agency as part of the conversation.
It's a really good point, and both Port and Dagan in the past actually did sit at the table with the SDA a couple years ago. We contemplated the infrastructure, maritime infrastructure, at GE port perspective. And so they were engaged. It was tough, as you would imagine. It's costly, the maritime infrastructure, so that was an aspect of it. But also as part of the regional council here, manufacturers that might not be able to sustain New York. So that's a really good point.
I can reach out to them.
That's a great suggestion. And yeah, I mean, to emphasize something I said earlier, I mean, I think we should have an appreciation for the capabilities of the Port of Albany compared to other ports in the Northeast or the East Coast, and their ability to make these extremely heavy lifts and move this big project cargo. And I think that's a real economic opportunity for the whole region. And I know today we're talking about one specific and probably the biggest, a heavy hitter, if you will. But there's, I think, an opportunity for others, to use this and take advantage of it. And I think it gives us a real advantage,
I mean, it's easy to do the one-off moves, the big one-offs. You can figure it out, get the routing done. But when you're traveling the same roads constantly, and then there's construction or there's this or that, it sets you back like days. I mean, a week. And it's just, I always say, there's got to be a way, but one and the other. I mean, you do 787. We pulled that 890,000-pound generator out of GE. It took us 3 days to get from General Electric to Port of Albany.
Mhm.
We were on every back road out in people's lawns.
But that's exactly right. The type of details I think, yeah, to get into for sure. So I don't expect anyone to be able to see this or read it, but I just wanted to sort of let you know that this is what one of the things we're working on is just trying to collect more information. And as I said, the folks at Dagan have been very helpful in helping us identify different routes, and we'll send this out with the notes, and we also have a hard copy here in the room. But this is a work in progress. This is we're really just getting started. As far, as the map, what we really want to do is to start to build out this database. We're gonna take the points that, and the lines that Dagan drew, and maybe give them like an ID and give them back to them, and just say like, hey, what's the problem here? Is it tight turn? Is it, a height restriction? Is it a weight restriction? Is it whatever? And, hopefully start to because right now I think the problem is we're kind of all over the place, right? And so hopefully start to winnow in on kind of a project or something, a family of projects that we can talk about. But one of the pieces of information that I would like to get from the folks in the room today is, who else should we be talking to from private industry? I feel pretty comfortable about who we need to be talking to from the public side. Obviously, the port, you know, Albany County, Schenectady County, and all the municipalities perhaps along the way. But from manufacturing, actually, I think you already answered one of my questions here. Is I appreciate your distinction of the different divisions in GE, and I honestly didn't totally understand, that Vernova was sort of new and consolidated other divisions, and I appreciate you coming here from the power divisions. Or is there anybody else we should be talking to from GE?
For this area, no, just the legacy GE company, as most people know it, it is now publicly traded under 3 different companies, and that would be GE Vernova, which is energy, is what we're talking about, that portfolio today, with Schenectady. But then there's also healthcare, and then there's aviation, and healthcare and aviation don't have a manufacturing footprint here, so I would say they would not be in scope
Okay.
for this, as well as the other legacy GE.
And now, I mean, like I said, I think, obviously G's sort of the heavy hitter in this particular conversation, but I think, our job is to make sure if there are other folks we should be talking to. I know you had mentioned, I think, Atlas and Dimension Fabricators.
Schenectady Steel, Cortec, who builds units for GE, has actually built them in my warehouse because they can't get them out of their facility. Or Boston Stock, they just physically can't get them. So they've used my warehouse and ship them out there. Like they take a fat corner and build in there, or then they do build them for GE. Fort Miller.
Where is that?
Just an idea, but if you pulled the database from New York State DOT, and you get almost like a heat map of like who, where are the origins for heavy haul permitting, right? And that's
Yeah, I'm not sure if they would make that
I
available
don't know if they would be able to
to
separate a
us.
super load from a regular oversized load.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, it's been, that's proprietary information, and even if they take out the names, they don't like to necessarily share that. But that is sort of from the public side, one of the folks we want to talk to.
Talk about local companies. There's so many more.
Hey,
About
wouldn't the Port of Albany have some of the companies that they export with, or they use water transportation with? And also, is the Canal Corp, are they online?
The Canal Corp is not online. They do regularly participate in this though, so we have good contacts there.
I mean, it seems to me that we're missing something by not using the canal. And I know Lock 8 in Rotterdam had been used in the past. In fact, as recently as I think maybe 2 months ago, freight forwarder Frock had used Lock 8 to facilitate transportation. It's not always easy getting down the side road, but there are some options that we can that have been looked at recently. And the canal or the county of Schenectady County actually owns property on the waterway, just before Lock 8, if Lock 8 were out of the question.
Hey, Eric, to add to that, a couple years ago when they were looking at it, there was a model out of Sweden how you can keep the canal open, extend the operating period of it from 8 months to closer to 12. It would require some modifications to the locks, but from his capital district planning committee, if you're looking to make changes to facilitate something like that, it's something you could do.
No, I agree. I think the European model has been, is certainly they do it a lot in Europe. They have a lot of canals that are open around, and even if we couldn't keep the canal open, 12 months, I mean, with the global warming, we could probably, even without the infrastructure, the buoys in the canal, we could certainly extend the season beyond the regular recreational season of 8 months. We could push easily into December or start moving again in April or sooner, depending on the conditions. And
the other thing is you could go from a crane assisted lift, which is what was done historically out of Lock 8. You could run a Ro-Ro out of there, but that would take an infrastructure modification as well, which would speed up the flow of the goods.
I think there's also not only that, there's also a terminal handling crane that you could station there at Lock 8, and that's I think that's that German crane company has those. They have 2 or 3 of them in Europe, and they're heavy lift and they're stationary, and they could easily lift up from off the truck onto a barge.
Lieber?
No.
The GE Chattanooga plant had it out on the river. I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, name escapes me right now, but it's I've seen the dimensions, I've seen the plans, lifting capability, and it's certainly within the parameters of what GE is trying to do now, and well within the parameters of some of the other manufacturers that may be interested in utilizing the canal.
I can tell you, I know a couple of them that don't even build anything there. They build it out of state because they can't transport that.
I was going to say, if this were to be available, it might even increase the amount of manufacturing in the area because now it's suddenly a viable option.
And Atlas Copco is doing a huge addition onto their manufacturing facility.
Yeah. We actually had when we had investigated this a couple of years ago, we had letters of support from a couple of different manufacturers in the region to help support this idea. The idea being the canal access.
You have an FTZ rep included in your stakeholders here.
Right.
Right. I was going to say on the list.
Yeah, okay, great. So I have a few more and I probably should have made another column here for public, I guess I maybe thought that went without saying, but yeah, so in addition to the port and the counties and the DOT and folks throughway, folks along the way, will add canal, Metroplex, and Kate as a rep of the FTZ. And then for manufacturing, again, we have, in addition to GE, who we were coordinating with, we will continue to coordinate with Atlas, Dimension Fabricators, Schenectady Steel, Cortec, and Fort Miller. We are sort of limited here with what we can do geographically because we are a 4-county organization and we can't really spend money outside of the 4 counties unless, and I realize these issues go way, way beyond that. And so to the extent that I can, I'm sort of happy to hand that off to somebody else outside our county, but I just to sort of make that clear that we're limited to this 4-county region that we're in now. That's not to say that we can't make suggestions or anything to other folks, but or take it to the folks that we know at the state level, but we can't spend any planning funds there. Oh, yes, and Empire State Development, thank you. And then from the trucking side, you know, we have some really great information that we've collected from Dagan. And I certainly don't expect them to list all of their competitors. But just curious, you know, again, we want to make sure that what I don't want is, you know, 6 months from now or a year from now, someone comes and say, you didn't talk to this person? What are you, crazy? So, you know, other trucking companies that operate in this realm, STX was one that's been mentioned. Is there others that the port?
Yeah.
What was that called again?
Transamerica.
Yeah, Chris, an organization you want to think about, CNRA, folks remember? Specialized Carriers and Rigging Association. It's a national organization. Some insights beyond borders. They may have members, local representatives. Maybe, sorry.
Okay.
Local.
What was it? The SCN?
SC, it's like the ampersand.
Oh, SC and RA. Okay, gotcha. Excellent. No, that's great. Great information. Thank you. And of course, you know, I mean, we're not going to shut the door if somebody else comes along during the way. It's open for them. So.
Chris, one of the things that you need, and it would be great to have just my time at work, we've transported blades for several of the manufacturers, and they were about 137 feet long. We need to have that foresight 10 years from now as to what is on the report as far as dimensions, because we had even some issues with the 137 foot blades where we would have to send them up the Northway to get off at Route 7 to get back on the Northway southbound because there was a bridge on 20 that would But if we could figure out, and you're never going to hit it, but if you knew what was on the drawing board for 10 or 15 years out, they plan for how is this truck going to make this turn. I've seen, and these are like Jetsons engineers. They have trucks where the turns are so tight they stand the blade up to turn, then they put the blade back down.
Wow.
We can learn from the mistakes in Europe. We've had stuff that we sent to Europe, and they scratched their head because how are we going to get down that? You know, and it's no disrespect to any community, but we got to have somebody at the higher level that's overseeing all of this. I don't think that they could possibly, with all the communities these things go through, bring every community into the conversation and have all of the issues listed. We should have some kind of we've been advocating for pre-planned routes where we know this is going to move 15 times. We shouldn't have to have a route plan 15 times. No, it goes this way. This should be a pre-approved plan, and it's just done. And every community that's along that way is consulted once.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and I think that's a great goal to try to get to, is a route or a group of routes that, because if a project comes in here, right, we can't just say, well, we think maybe an oversized load might go over this at some point, so therefore you should design your roundabout this way. And we have to have something on paper that says this is the route, and therefore you have to do this when you're designing for this route. I mean, I think that's, you know,
it's very much chicken and egg type of scenario too. What I often advise, not here to promote this, but just I often advise public sector clients who are engaged in this type of outreach with the private sector, is that a vision towards developing for freight transportation network during the planning process as facilities get upgraded. If you are doing a rehab project, bridge replacement, if it's on this core network, you have to designate the network first. You don't have to put a ton of investment in up front, but once you have it on a map, now the private sector starts to think, hey, I can move things on this route, maybe not now, but maybe in the future, maybe to push a capital project up if I've got a major investment in the area, kind of tie all of that together, but at least have a concept on paper. And then this is where you start to look at the physical capabilities of the route, both from dimensional standpoint. The overhead clearances are the easy one. It's the long-term degradation of the pavement and the potential other issues where running a one-off load once every 10 years is one thing, running 10 a week is a whole different matter on the pavement side, bridge side. So having all that tied together, at least thinking in those terms, moving forward, to how do you get that network designated?
Right. And that's, well, and thank you. That's a great, no, that's a great segue. So I think I already mentioned this and I'll just say it again, but
Can I say one other thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Who would we have to contact to let you know that we have a water main break and half the road is shut down? Because if you get on this road and all of a sudden you can't go anyplace for 6-8 hours, and the road is tied up now for medical emergency, a fire, what do we do then?
Can I give you
Fire
my phone
you
number?
can't plan for, but I know like last week I was in Maine, but I was notified that 787 and 90 were shut down for an extended period because of an incident.
Well, who are we supposed to notify?
Who is it? The New York DOT or one of the agencies that just puts out that blast of any traffic conditions.
Yeah, it's the
all stuff that certainly could be included and developed as we went along to make us, as they say, a better mousetrap. One of the things that seems like a simple fix, the canal, and working with the Canal Corporation to open it up 9, 10, 12 months a year. Well, that's great, except when we float something down the canal for Waterford, it would have to sit there until March because the next lock is federal, not state. And so it's not as easy a fix, but the lock at Troy is run by the Army Corps of Engineers. And during the winter, they keep all of their equipment in a dry lock. So it's, there's a lot of other things that you consider when you're talking. I mean, that's an easy fix. Just keep the water in the canal.
Yeah. And I think that's really, what I'm learning. And again, learning today, continuing to learn is that really, like I said, the devil really is in these small details that I think, how we define the route, how do we, specify pavements and things like that we need. And are we, that we're going in the right place. So,
Is there any more information on the circle being put in on the corner of Washington and New Corner? Has that been solidified that it's going to happen? Because that is right on the main high, heavy, and wide route to Port Albany.
Yeah, so that is, a project that's on our transportation improvement program. So it's a funded project. It's in design or planning right now. So
can we sit with them and have some?
I can try to connect you with the folks at Albany County. And I don't think anyone from Albany County is on this call, but I can arrange for that to happen.
We either need to make.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lisa Raimondo is on the line. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, please, can you repeat your question?
So the question that Mary had was the roundabout project at 155 and Washington Avenue Extension is along the common high and wide route to and from the port. And they were wondering if they could have a discussion with the county about how to design that in a way that they can still use it for that purpose.
Of course. I mean, we would have to meet the design standards for the route as it stands right now. So we're currently in the design phase, so there's plenty of time to set up a meeting. I can, can you pass on my contact information?
Will do.
We can set up a meeting with the county and DOT and our design consultant.
So make that connection. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we've discussed this already a little bit. It's not necessarily the existence of a roundabout that bothers you. It's the way in which it's designed, or designing it in a way that there are, features that can either be crossed or easily moved. I think one of the examples that you gave to me, and I have no idea if this would even be illegal in the US, but is, and you were saying in other countries how in the middle of the roundabout where there's like a statue or something, they just like lift it with a forklift, right, and move it out of the way. But something like that, a simple, things that can be flipped down or easily moved to the side, right? That's kind of the
And
types
it's
of
the curb.
things.
If you're always you're trying to build that curb up to make it so you can slide over it and not take a chunk out of the tire, you end up putting tons of plywood and metal slick you try to build. So you're out there for an hour and a half trying to build a curb to get around a circle.
Right.
That intersection, the only other,
That's
the second other way to get out of GE piece of issue and Schenectady County the other way, and it's also the main thoroughfare for all oversized roads to go up north. And
Yeah, I live near there and I see a lot of.
Yeah, that route that he's on and that route is like only two routes out of G.
Yep.
So that's a good point. So that even if we have, utopia, right, we still need a backup plan because things are going to happen. And the one thing that I wanted to mention is just our outlook of economic development. There's a lot of things that are sourced globally that come into this area for GE. There's a lot of things that go outbound that are remanufactured, prepared, that come back out of here. And so I'm a big fan of with the bigs, like float them if you can. If you can't float it, rail it. If you can't rail it, trucking is almost like a last resort, but we can't float or rail it. But we have in the last 2 years, we've seen two extreme weather events, right? This at the end of last year, over the winter, we saw the Panama Canal, right, where we couldn't move through that. And then the year before that, the European canal network, which is much more developed than we have here in the United States, also went through a drought and we could not move our projects through it because the water levels were so low. So I just want to say that I'm a big fan of floating things, but a canal is not, you're subject to those extreme weather events and you open yourself up to it.
Yeah, and it sounds like right now, the way it sits, the canal just doesn't have the reliability that you're looking for. Is that fair to say?
There's one bridge that I'm not sure get under.
The one in Waterford, yeah.
I don't
I'm
think
not sure
you
if I
can
can
get
walk.
unless the only thing that I said they take it out, but I mean, and is that a pedestrian bridge or a rail bridge? But I know Momentum is it's rail and
It's rail for
Momentum.
momentum spur.
Right.
All right, so I want to move along the conversation just because we have a little bit more business that we do need to get to today. And like I said, this is just I consider this to be sort of the beginning, definitely not the end. So we are going to continue these conversations, continue to put more details, where they need to be. With respect to the mapping, like I think I already said this, we're going to try to like specify issues at each location, try to get input from others, so that we can say, hey, we talked to the big players in the region, as a base level of information. And so where do we take it from there? For the way our organization works is, we work on a April 1st to March 30th budget timeline. So I'm sort of limited in what I can do until April 1st of next year, other than, sort of smaller things like what we've been doing so far. But what I would like to do is try to develop between now and, the next probably November, a kind of an issue statement and some sort of scope of work of what we could do here that we can start. Maybe it's a bigger effort, with more resources on April 1st. Of course, that requires policy board approval. So I can't guarantee that like we're going to be able to do this, although I imagine that this, it seems like the type of thing that would be approved. But I'm just putting that out there. I think, something else we can do in the short term is maybe convene like a task force, kind of a subgroup of this group. Not that this group isn't the right forum, but, really getting all those players that we talked about 20 minutes ago in the room, and, starting to put a little bit more of what are we going to do here? Because like I said, there's some things that we can do, but I think there's some other things that we really need to ask others to do. And so we want to make sure we're asking them and we're asking the right questions. I think that's important too. And then the third bullet, just to continue to identify any short-term projects, like we just did right now with the Albany 155 and Washington Avenue extension. In the absence of having a designated route, in the meantime, we're just going to try to sort of ad hoc this and say, all right, what about this one? What about that one? And try to get folks together in the same room. It's not the best way to do it, but at least we're doing something. We're not just saying, well, we're going to wait till we have a plan 3 years from now or something to do it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Any input that anybody has is appreciated. There's no blueprint for doing a planning project like this, Tom, right? I mean, this is a bit of a one-off, so we're kind of learning as we go along the right way. And I'm hoping that the experts will correct me as we go along. So any other thoughts on this before we move on? All right. Well, thanks everybody for their input. And like I said, this will be a continuing topic that we're going to be working on, over the next couple of years, I'm sure. Not sure if anyone is available online from New York State DOT. I don't see David Rosenberg here. But I can give a brief update on the New York State freight plan. They are nearly done. They submitted their draft plan to FHWA last month. They are on a required every 4-year update schedule. Their new plan is due September 1st, so we're right at the end of the deadline here. The plan has a fiscally constrained list of projects, and I'll talk about the projects that they are proposing for our region. I'm not sure what else to say about state freight plan. So hopefully we'll get an update from DOT next meeting. But not to get too far into the weeds here, but in order to spend federal National Highway Freight Program money, NHFP money, federal requirement that projects are on critical urban freight corridors. The states become eligible for NHFP funds once an approved state freight plan comes through, which I mentioned is every 4 years and has a fiscally constrained freight investment plan. New York State DOT is limited to 150 miles of critical urban freight corridor statewide. And so if you're pretty good at geography or math, you'll know that that's not a lot. And you would use up that 150 miles in our region or any region here. So what DOT's strategy has been is to designate short segments, like just a bridge or just a short segment of road, and then use the NHFP funding on that, on those projects. So, and this requires coordination with the MPOs, which we've been working on, and that's why we're talking about this today. We've presented this to our planning committee on August, and it'll be presented to our policy board in September, where I anticipate that they will certify by letter these designations. So the 3 projects in our region that DOT is proposing for NHFP funding, the first is 146 over 890 in the city of Schenectady. And this is $5 million of NHFP funding, and just that bridge that you see in the picture, 0.1 miles, designated as a critical urban freight corridor. The second is 146 over Chrysler Ave and CSX in the town of Rotterdam. And with $11 million project with $9 million in NHFP funding, a little bit longer bridge. So this is 0.2 miles. For those of you who are familiar with it, it's kind of a pretty long span there. And the third is to add money to an existing interchange improvement project on the Northway at exit 16, Ballard Road in the town of Wilton. This is definitely a true freight project here. And this is Google Street View, but it actually does a great job of kind of illustrating, this is a pretty rural interchange. Since it was built, there are 2 pretty big distribution centers up there, Target Distribution Center and Ace. And so the interchange just really isn't meeting the needs of, what's happening up there now with all the employment and all the trucks. And, you can imagine just from this view here, like if a truck was turning left to go on to the Northway North, and it needs a long time to turn. It just, congestion starts to build up. And you can even see here, same on the exiting ramps, two trucks waiting to turn left has backed up that ramp. This is just in street view. This is just by coincidence. Has backed up that ramp almost to the interstate. And once you start backing up on the interstate, you start getting into more safety issues and things like that. So this is a great project. And with this project, they'll be adding turning lanes and things like that. More viewing space.
A quick question. Would a project like this be eligible for NHFP funding regardless of the critical urban free, if the Northway itself is on the national highway freight network?
I think that the project location, my understanding, still has to be designated. Yeah. Well, before I move on, any questions about NHFP's urban freight corridor projects in the region? All right, so next we have an update on our Capital District and Communities program, and Chaim, I'll turn it over to you.
Give me a second to get my video up. So Jacob isn't here today, but I'll fill in. He's planning an event at the Sprague Energy facility in Rensselaer, and they are providers of renewable diesel. So the tour will include some information about renewable diesel and how customers, trucking companies can use it. Just some information about renewable diesel if you don't already know. So Sprague is now able to deliver it in New York State, which wasn't always the case. Renewable diesel isn't the same thing as biodiesel. It's has the same chemical components as traditional diesel, so you don't need to change anything in your engine to be able to run on renewable diesel. You just get it delivered and then fill up your trucks the same way. The benefits of renewable diesel is that it can reduce emissions by up to 75%. There's no infrastructure costs, like I said. You just get a tank of it delivered and you fill up your trucks the same way you would with regular diesel, and it meets ASTM-D specifications. This graph in here, I don't know if it's easy to see with the yellow and blue, but the yellow line is the domestic production of renewable diesel, and the blue line is the production and the yellow is the consumption. And even without being able to see the details, you can see that the production is lower than the consumption. So that's why there is a need for more domestic production facilities, and Sprague is providing that in our region. And the event's going to be on October 15th, and Jacob will follow up with more information and a full agenda when that's available.
Excellent. Thanks, Chaim. And so we'll send out that information when it's available to this group as well. Next on the agenda, just wanted to give a quick update and plug. Again, for those of you, I know if you participate in a lot of our committees, you've probably heard this many times, but it's very important to us. In Motion, it's our long-range transportation plan. It's one of the core products that we're required to develop as an MPO. There is a survey open now. The link is there. I will also send out the link when I send out the notes. But it's public survey. It's not scientific. Take it, send it to your friends or whatever. If you live in the region, we'd love your input. I will say that, traditionally freight interests are underrepresented in these types of efforts. So really appreciate, lending your unique point of view to these surveys. I think it's very important. You know, like I said, it's not scientific. So certain, groups are very overrepresented and certain are underrepresented. And traditionally, freight has been underrepresented in these types of surveys. So that's all a plug to continue to be involved with our long range transportation plan development. You can find all this at inmotionplan.org. Yeah, just if you have any questions or anything at any point, you can contact me and I'll put you in touch with whoever you need to talk to. So next we have member updates, and I have at least two queued up here. We've got about 12 minutes. So first was Tom was going to share some information, if you don't mind, if this is enough time, I don't want to cut you short, about continuing the truck parking conversation. So
for those of you who are involved in the extensive outreach that we had done, and the multiple presentations we had done as part of the truck parking study the last 2 years, actually started 2022, I guess. This is a project that is on the drawing board. It's beyond the drawing board. These buildings are all completed. This is the JW Industrial Park in the Allentown area of Pennsylvania. And this is a great application, really like an application on steroids of the concept that we have talked about as far as incorporating truck parking and staging into an industrial development instead of leaving it for the DOT to build rest areas and the turn and the thruway, the New York State Thruway Authority to go and build parking capacity out on the main line of the highway. I don't know if there's animation that shows up. Yeah.
No, there you go.
So if you look at these two areas here within this industrial park, there are two parking lots that have been added to this, that have been embedded in this. And if you hit the button again, we should have some figures here. I think it's somewhere between 145 and 150 truck parking spaces in this industrial park with these 6 buildings, which is enormous in my mind. I looked at the data that Pennsylvania has collected. This would be the equivalent of like one of the 25 largest truck stops in Pennsylvania out of the 350 or some that they have in their database. It's comparable in size to the Travel Centers of America location in the Harrisburg area off Interstate 81. And what's important about this, in the context of the conversation we had before, is that this was not done to meet some kind of a local zoning requirement, which is one of the things that we have recommended as a course of action for municipalities who are approving this type of industrial development to require this sort of thing. This developer, they come out of the Inland Empire of California. They do this as a design feature to help sell the site on their prospective tenants and their buyers who are building or buying the warehouses that are being developed here. So they look at this as an amenity. They could get a higher lease rate on their warehouse space by including this feature, which goes a long way towards solving the problems that you have with overflowing rest areas and trucks parked on their local streets in the neighborhoods of some of these facilities and these industrial parks. And then there's one other slide here just where I show some additional features. The Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association looked at this and they got really excited about it because they didn't just put parking spaces out here. They added a lot of features to these parking lots that the trucking industry really likes to see. There are these pedestals in one of the lots for electrification, so that the trucks can plug in and shut off their diesel engines overnight if they would otherwise be idling to run an air conditioner or a heater on while the driver's sleeping there. And the bottom left thing, you see that overhead, that machine for clearing snow off the roof of a trailer that's parked out there for an extended period of time. This really helps to address a big issue that the trucking industry faces, where they're limited to certain hours of service. They have a limit on the number of hours they can drive. And then they also have mandatory rest requirements for the drivers as well. So if you're a driver dropping a load off here and you run out of your hours of service under federal regulation, you've got to stop and park and rest for a minimum of, say, 10 hours. You might wake up the next morning and find that there's 10 inches of snow that fell on your truck. You can get out on the road system here by just driving underneath this thing. And again, this is all free. Everything that I can do. I went out and took the photos of this place, and there's nothing here that constrains anybody. You don't have to pay for any of this. I don't know about the electricity side of this, but once this is done, like I said, the EMTA president, Rebecca Euler, she got really excited about this, and her members are all over this. And they're now using this to kind of go plead their case before municipalities who are looking at approving these new big industrial parks hey, look, can you go and convince the developer to incorporate this sort of feature inside? So I just wanted to bring that here. I had come across it the last few days. I gone out and taking the photos. Chris, thank you for putting them up here. If anybody has any questions, I can talk now or afterwards before you keep.
Appreciate it, Tom. Appreciate, continue to share best practices. And I think Eastern Pennsylvania is kind of leading the way with this because
Out of necessity.
it's out of necessity, right? That's where it's the worst.
I've been saying this for years, planning board should incorporate this in their planning to allow truck parking at the facilities, and that should be part of the planning board's job. I've already told our planning board that this is going to be incorporated in it. If any
Not
large
just your plan-
projects
yeah.
come,
It's not just your planning board, talk to your municipal officials. In some of these cases, you could write this down. Forks Township, Pennsylvania, they updated their zoning code to require some really interesting provisions. It's not just the number of spaces, but by law now at an industrial park in Forks Township, if you are a driver and you run out of your federal hours of service while you're at that location, the owner of that facility cannot make you. You're there for that period of time. It could be a 10-hour mandatory rest
Did they
period.
put amenities in that facility?
Did
They put amenities, bathrooms, and
There was nothing there. Now, some of this, like, it's all empty. The buildings are all done. Aldi, the grocery store chain is the occupant, one of the big buildings there. They're starting to do business there. But this, I think they're still completing this. I don't see bathroom facilities out there now, but my suspicion is that the buildings themselves, that the drivers have access to bathroom facilities in the warehouse themselves.
and McLean's and Syracuse have it all, but they have a lot for parking for trucks,
That's-
early arriving trucks, or ones that run out of hours, they can park across the road. There's a zone down McLean's.
I make presentations like this to municipalities, to the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. Get that message out. They tend to be very receptive to the idea. One of the things that the local municipal official who brought this to my attention told me was they overcame a lot of local opposition to it because they don't call these truck parking lots. These are truck staging lots or rest locations, and the public was more receptive to it when you put the human face on it and say, well, this isn't a truck park there idling in your neighborhood. There's a driver in this. We're going to put these features in so the truck doesn't have to idle. There's a human being there who's making a delivery to a warehouse. You may have family members who work there. This is all, as Chris said, that this is all the best practice, where you get a convergence of the interests of the trucking industry, the real estate developers themselves, and then users of the facility, the occupants of the warehouse.
I have a question about OpEx costs for maintenance and upkeep, just because if you have if they're at like a TA or Love's or something, right? You're making money off the concessions and diesel there, right? And sometimes paid for parking. But for there, if it's for freebie, I just been around long enough to I see a lot of yellow paint on ICC bumpers and a lot of garbage cleaned up and fixing the snowplow thing after it's been hit for the 50th time.
Right. That's a really good question. We'll go back and look at this.
Yeah, because you can do the math with the top of a 53-foot dry van, right? And that's 102 wide, right? You get 6 inches of snow, all of a sudden, what's that cube? And then you clear it off once. It's like you almost have to have a bucket loader continue going.
so my kids do it. Yes, they sit there all night.
All night, right? So it just there's a lot of OpEx to go with that. I'm just wondering how these facilities, right, that are going to be bottom line driven, going to incorporate those costs into that.
One of the appealing things about doing this in an industrial park is that there may presumably have a maintenance, almost like an HOA fee on top of whatever that the local is paying into. I'm trying to follow up with them. The problem is that this company is out of California, dealing with an industrial park I can't get to, and there's no JW company. It's actually Watson Development, and J is a partner company. There's 2 different companies. I've got to find the right person.
And then I almost think about too, because it's sort of like a unicorn concept, right? So if you're a driver and you know about that, you're like, okay, I got this great place, right? Secret's out.
The reason that
like an
I thought
airport
that was
lounge where it's like, where's your ticket for a flight the next 3 hours?
Right. I thought that was going to be the first question.
Yeah.
One of the full disclosure, one of the reasons this works where it is that it's in an industrial park that's been built some distance off the interstate highway system. It's north of Allentown. You're at least 6 or 7 miles away you would have to travel some distance off Interstate 78 to get up there. I think if this was in some other place, or if word gets out that it's there, you're gonna start to see them putting some kind of access control into that.
Right, like your bill waiting has to have a pickup or delivery on it.
Or even
within
just electronic
24 hours.
card swipe, whatever it is, some kind of limitation, or you gotta check in with somebody. That's a possibility.
Security.
Yeah.
More sense.
Yeah, and yes.
Okay,
That's
love the concept though.
yeah, it's great, and we're continuing the kind of this truck parking conversation has been something we've had here
Sure.
since I've started here talking about freight. So other member updates. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but I know there's a big event coming on at the port. So
Yeah, the Port of Albany is having our Port Industry Day, September 19th. Registration will start at 9:30. And the welcoming and then the keynote, happens after that, starting at 10 a.m. We're also going to have, tours, as part of this as well, so see parts of the maritime operation, parts of the port's expansion that we've been pushing on with development. So that's a Thursday, September 19th. Registration's at 9:30. Event starts at 10 a.m. We have been sending out save the dates, so hopefully some of you have gotten those, or I like that now. Good, and if not, we can share that.
yeah, I'll send it to the group if you want to send it to me. I think. Yeah, we have it out here too, printed. But yeah, if you want to send me the thing, I'd love to send it around. Encourage everyone to attend. We've been in the past. It's a really great event and chance to see behind the gates. That you don't always get to see if you're not a.
Great speakers. The chair of the American Association of Port Authorities, who also runs the Tampa Port, will be a keynote speaker, and I think it's really interesting for the national perspective. And then the executive director of the Maryland Port was on board with the Key Bridge incident, will also be a speaker, speaker in general. And then we'll have a panel, specialties related to look at the economics of supply chain ports from a local, state, and national and international perspective, actually. And as the port is looked at maritime freight, we've also looked at the economics of it and how does it affect strategic development. So that will be part of the conversation. Just learned we have a leader from economic development perspective of the state that will join us as well as say too.
Excellent. Great. All right, so we are exactly at 10:30. If anybody has any other member updates, you can maybe do a 30-second update or something like that. Don't want to rush you, but I like to be respectful of everybody's time. So action items, there are more to add here, but again, in-motion plan survey, Port Industry Day, September 19th. We're going to continue this oversized overweight discussion. I have many action items personally that I will be doing for that. Our next meeting of this group will be November 20th at 9:00 a.m. Unless that's the day before Thanksgiving. It's a week away. Okay, good. I was like, wait a minute, we have to change that. Yeah. So November 20th, 9:00 a.m. here. And thanks again for everyone who attended. Appreciate everyone's really valuable input. And very productive meeting. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Send you a photo to also send you the actual
Hewitt.
We're gonna
Here's the wheels in my yard.
Oh, they're that one. Oh, they got the big copper wire.
They have the whole front of the wire.
I hope everybody starts next